Crips gang leader Stanley Tookie Williams.
I said I was going to be the baddest gangster that ever lived, and I became.
It's a case that's captured national headlines.
Stanley Tookie Williams.
Stanley Tookie Williams.
Now, Raymond Washington ended up getting killed.
Kill someone, you're gonna punish for it.
I have to write about this.
Stanley Tookie Williams was a name that carried both fear and inspiration. Born on December 29, 1953, in New Orleans, Louisiana, his early life was marked by instability. His family moved to South Central Los Angeles when he was a child, and by the time he was a teenager, Williams was drawn into the chaotic world of street gangs. In 1971, alongside Raymond Washington, he co-founded the Crips, one of the most notorious and violent gangs in the United States. The Crips became synonymous with drugs, violence, and death, spreading their influence across the nation. Williams, a hulking figure known for his strength and presence, was both feared and respected in this world. But his life of crime would eventually lead to his downfall. In 1979, he was arrested for a string of brutal murders. Despite maintaining his innocence, he was convicted and sentenced to death for 4 killings during 2 separate robberies. While on death row, Williams underwent a profound transformation. He renounced his gang affiliations, dedicated himself to anti-violence efforts, and authored children's books that warned against the lure of gang life. His efforts earned him multiple Nobel Peace Prize nominations and the support of prominent figures. However, his past loomed large, and the debate over his redemption versus the justice owed to his victims came to a head in the final 24 hours of his life. On December 12, 2005, Stanley Tookie Williams woke up in his San Quentin death row cell for the last time. At 52 years old, he had spent more than half his life behind bars. The morning began like any other, a tray of oatmeal and milk delivered through the cell bars. For Williams, however, this breakfast was his last. No special treatment was afforded to death row inmates, even on their final day. The monotony of prison life continued, a stark contrast to the storm raging outside the prison walls. Protesters, activists, and supporters gathered by the thousands, holding candles and chanting for clemency. The hours dragged on as Williams' legal team scrambled for a last-minute reprieve. Throughout the day, they filed appeals to multiple courts, presenting statements from new witnesses who claimed his innocence and emphasizing his transformative work. Williams' books, such as Gangs and How to Avoid Them, had reached children worldwide, providing a credible voice against gang violence. His Tookie Speaks Foundation had grown into a beacon of hope for youth in marginalized communities. But the appeals were systematically denied. The California Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and finally, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected his petitions. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had the power to grant clemency, also declined, citing the gravity of Williams' crimes and questioning the sincerity of his redemption. Schwarzenegger's decision came despite their shared history. Both had trained on Venice Beach in the 1970s, where Williams was known for his imposing physique and charisma. Critics argued that Williams had failed to atone fully for his past. Prosecutors pointed out his refusal to cooperate with authorities by revealing gang secrets, a stance they said undermined his anti-violence message.
Who is this guy? What did he do? King of the Crips? Really? I didn't know that.
At 6 p.m., Williams was strip-searched and escorted to the death cell, located just steps away from the execution chamber. The small cell, equipped with only a cot and a toilet, was a stark holding area for those in their final hours. Williams remained composed, reading letters from supporters around the world. Many were from children who wrote of how his story had inspired them to avoid gangs. He read silently, finding solace in their words. Williams met with a few visitors that evening, including Fred Davis Jackson, a longtime friend who had visited him regularly since 1997. Despite the gravity of the situation, their farewell was calm. "I'll see you later," Jackson said, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy, though he knew it would be their last meeting. A tray of turkey was brought to Williams as his final meal, but he left it untouched, drinking only milk and water. He declined a sedative, choosing to face the coming hours with full awareness.
What can you say about the supposed rehabilitation of Tookie Williams behind bars?
I would conclude that maybe that was all fake.
Shortly before midnight, Williams was led to the execution chamber. The room was cold and sterile, with a padded gurney at its center. Guards secured him with straps while the execution team prepared the 4 lines. Finding a vein proved difficult, and the process dragged on for nearly 20 minutes. At one point, Williams asked, "You doing that right?" His calm demeanor began to waver, but he maintained his composure, glancing toward his 5 chosen witnesses. He mouthed something to them, though his words were inaudible to observers. At 12:21 a.m., the first drug-A massive dose of sodium pentothal entered his bloodstream, rendering him unconscious. This was followed by pancuronium bromide to stop his breathing and potassium chloride to halt his heart. By 12:35 a.m., Stanley Tookie Williams was pronounced dead. Williams' death sparked outrage and mourning among his supporters. Barbara Becknell, a close ally who co-authored his books, cried out in anguish, declaring, "The state of California just killed an innocent man." Outside, the chants of protesters echoed in the night, condemning the execution as a failure of justice and redemption. Civil rights leader Jesse Jackson criticized the decision as revenge over redemption, arguing that Williams' life could have continued to make a positive impact. To his detractors, the execution was a long overdue justice for the victims of his crimes. To his supporters, it was the silencing of a voice that had turned from violence to advocacy, a man who sought to prevent others from following in his footsteps. Stanley Tookie Williams remains a polarizing figure, his life a collision of violence, transformation, and controversy. Was he a man redeemed, or did his past forever define him? His execution reignited debates about the death penalty, forgiveness, and the possibility of change. In his final years, Williams' words reached thousands, offering a roadmap to avoid the path that led him to San Quentin's death row. Yet for his victims' families, justice meant his life could not continue. His story leaves behind a haunting question. Can a person ever truly atone for their past, or are some actions unforgivable?